Coming up on The World Today, United Nations criticizes police raid against suspected drug traffickers in Rio de Janeiro amid allegations of abuse. Under 40s to be offered alternative to AstraZeneca vaccine in the UK. Plus, former Maldives President Mohamed Mercier in critical condition after bomb attack. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shubowale. We begin today in Brazil. The United Nations Human Rights Office has strongly criticized a police raid against suspected drug traffickers in Rio de Janeiro amid allegations of abuse and extrajudicial executions. The deadliest police operation in the city's history has left 25 people dead, including a police officer. Residents say police killed suspects who wanted to surrender and entered homes without a warrant. Police have denied any wrongdoing, saying officers acted in self-defense.
There's a sort of widespread responsibility here, a shared responsibility. Yes, of course, there are political sides to it, but you have the institutions which control these operations. And you have the judiciary, so you have the police, you have the judiciary, you have the ministries involved in these kind of investigations and operations. So it appears, as you say, that collectively, they're not succeeding in stopping these kind of really disturbing, over-the-top lethal operations. So something clearly is wrong there. As I mentioned, the Federal Supreme Court has been involved in the issue and had issued a specific ruling back in 2020 restricting police operations. So you're right, something's not working, or a lot of things are not working, and I think there probably needs to be a collective review, as we suggested, really a broad review of what is going wrong and how to fix it.
Edgar Mercier reports for the VOA in Brazil. He joins us now from Sao Paulo. Edgar, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Pleasure is mine. Good afternoon, guys.
Good afternoon. Just give us an idea of what exactly happened in Rio de Janeiro last night.
Yes, this was the most lethal operation. The history, 25 people died, including a police officer who was in the operation. This case happened in the Jacarezinho outskirts favela, one of the largest in Rio. All of this happened because of a complaint that local drug traffickers were inviting children and adolescents to commit crimes and dealer drugs. And this operation is a part of the war against the traffic. Looks like Rio every day. The city is experiencing crime like this daily, and it also shows how people who live in favelas are treated by the police every day. For you who is watching us understand, there is a Brazilian Supreme Court law that prohibits police operation in favelas during the pandemic, and yet the Rio police invaded the Jacarezinho community yesterday. The residents report scary and seems like a terror movie. They say that the police carry out a real execution of people invading houses and spreading terror. The intense shooting left several residents injured, including those on the metro, which passed close to the favela. 2 people ended up being seriously injured yesterday.
Edgar, you paint a very scary picture there, and it's believed that this was the deadliest single police operation in 16 years for the region there. The United Nations Human Rights Office has called for an independent investigation. But how are the police authorities in the country reacting to the call for that investigations and defending the use of force by officers?
Yes, in the police version, all those who died were drug dealers and criminals. The police affirmed that they did nothing wrong. The operation, the favela, was carried out because the traffickers were recruiting young people for crime. So for them, nothing wrong happened in Rio. A lot of human rights organizations like International Amnesty and Human Rights Watch rejected the police action and called for independent investigation from the favela. They denounced that the execution of the dead who did not even have a chance to survive. Most arrived dead at the hospital when the crime scene wasn't done, preventing a fair investigation. It was an episode that marked the whole Brazil.
Police violence and crime has in recent years been one of Brazil's most polarizing political discussions. In 2019 alone, data shows that the police killed about 5,800 people. Now, it's one thing to call for an investigation and another for one to occur. How likely is this to happen?
First, the history of the Brazilian policy here is very, very bloody on the hands. And what you see daily are deaths mailing of black and poor people across Brazil. There is not a day when here in our country we do not record the death of a black or poor and innocent people. Yes, there are crimes, but there is also structural racism and impunity that always punishes the weakest. Like last week, for instance, 2 black men were killed here in Brazil because they stole a piece of meat. They were starving because of the pandemic. So they were not arrested, they were not tried, just executed. And this is the culture that remains present in our country every day.
I'm interested in how all this is reflecting on the president. President Bolsonaro has come under fire for a range of different issues lately, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic. Has he commented at all on, these latest developments?
Yeah. What shocked us one more time is that neither President of the Republic, Jair Bolsonaro, much less the governor of Rio, Carlos Castro, expressed or show condolences for the deaths. This makes it clear that Brazilian government officials become conniving with this type of action. Bolsonaro, for example, was born in Rio, was elected by Rio, and nevertheless did not issue any statement or apologize for what happened in Jacarezinho community.
Really tragic situation there. Edgar, Mercier, a journalist in Brazil. Thank you so much for bringing us up to speed, and do stay safe.
It's a pleasure. Bye-bye.
Some updates on the COVID-19 pandemic now. Australia will resume repatriation flights for some citizens in India after a controversial ban on arrivals from the country ends on May the 15th. Prime Minister Scott Morrison has faced criticism for failing to help citizens trapped in the COVID-19 ravaged nation. The ban sparked further anger after the government said Australians seeking to fly home could face jail or fines. Mr. Morrison later played down this threat.
Security Committee decision that was taken yesterday afternoon where we noted that the biosecurity order and the pause was successfully reducing the caseload and risk regarding arrival of persons from India, that the biosecurity order would remain in place with no change until its intended completion date of May 15, that the repatriation flights, the facilitated commercial flights that we have been running now for a considerable period of time, that assisted some 19,000 and 20,000, in fact, people to return from India already, that they would resume on the 15th of May. Advised that while the pause in direct flights from India would be further reviewed next week, it was likely that the Commonwealth Government would not be resuming direct commercial flights from India, and instead invited the states and territories to participate in receiving additional repatriation flights, facilitated commercial flights, into their states.
Meanwhile, India has reported yet another record daily rise in coronavirus cases with over 400,000 new infections. This marks the 16th consecutive day when the South Asian nation has witnessed a single-day spike of at least 300,000 new cases.
India has again shattered its single-day record for new COVID-19 cases, with 414,188 infections confirmed across the country in the past 24 hours. This week alone, India has added 1.57 million cases and over 15,100 deaths from the virus. And with 234,083 fatalities and over 21 million infections, India accounts for the world's worst outbreak after the United States. Hospitals are scrambling for beds and oxygen in response to the deadly second surge in infections. With the government facing criticism as patients die outside hospitals, consignments of oxygen and equipment have been arriving from the United States, France, Britain, Russia and other countries in recent days.
I wish to extend my gratitude for all the help coming from different countries all over the world in respect of providing ventilators, oxygen cylinders, BiPAP machines, oxygen concentrators, pulse oximeters, PPE kits, N95 masks and drugs, antiviral drugs and other drugs from all over the world with their great generosity, and that too in a short span of time.
More regional authorities are rolling out lockdowns to curb the spread of the COVID-19 in the country. By Thursday, a dozen of states and regions in India had taken measures such as curfews or lockdowns, including the states of Kerala, Himachal Pradesh, Maharashtra, Odisha and Bihar, as well as the capital city, New Delhi.
Away from India, let's take a look at the situation in other parts of the world. The World Health Organization has granted emergency approval for the COVID-19 vaccine made by Chinese firm Sinopharm. It's the first vaccine developed by a non-Western country to get WHO backing. China has already vaccinated millions of people at home and in 45 other countries. Meanwhile, UK regulators say under 40s will be offered an alternative to the AstraZeneca vaccine due to a link with rare blood clots. Well, here's more on this and other developments on our COVID-19 Global Update.
In the UK, most adults under the age of 40 will be given an alternative to the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine due to a link with rare blood clots.
Building on our previous advice related to those aged 30 years and under, we now advise that unvaccinated adults aged 30 to 39 years who do not have an underlying health condition that puts them at higher risk of severe COVID-19 should be preferentially offered an alternative to the AstraZeneca vaccine where this is possible and only where no substantial delay in access to vaccination might arise.
The UK's medicines safety regulator says there have been 242 clotting cases and 49 deaths, with 28.5 million doses of the vaccine administered. However, the agency maintains that the benefits of the vaccine continue to outweigh the risks.
I can confirm today that the position of the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency remains unchanged, that the benefits of the AstraZeneca vaccine against COVID-19, with the associated risks of hospitalization and death, continue to outweigh the risks of the vaccine for the vast majority of people. There is therefore no change to the approval. The balance of benefits and risks of the vaccine is very favourable for older age groups, but it is more finely balanced for younger people.
Meanwhile, Germany has recorded 18,485 more cases of the virus as the country loosens restrictions on the AstraZeneca vaccine for adults. Data shows the 7-day incidence rate continues to drop, now at 125.7 cases per 100,000 people per week. Health Minister Jens Spahn says the third wave of the coronavirus pandemic appears to be broken as social distancing measures and an accelerating vaccination campaign help lower the infection rate. In other developments, Japan has extended the state of emergency in Tokyo and 3 other areas until May 31st, weeks before the Tokyo Olympics. The 3-week extension of restrictions has been attributed to the 4th wave of the virus as Tokyo and Osaka continue to record infections. The extension from May 11 to May 31st leaves a margin of less than 2 months before the game starts in July 23rd. And finally, Nepal reported a new record high of 9,070 COVID-19 cases in 24 hours on Thursday as the country battles a surge of infections. Additionally, another 54 people were confirmed to have died of the disease in the same period, marking the 3rd day in a row when daily death toll exceeded 50.
A federal grand jury in Minneapolis has indicted 4 former police officers involved in the arrest and death of George Floyd on charges that they violated Floyd's civil rights while detaining him last year. The 3-count indictment names Derek Chauvin, Shehu Thao, Alexander Kueng and Thomas Lane as defendants and charges them with depriving Floyd of his constitutional right not to be deprived of liberty without due process under the law, which includes his right to not have his medical needs ignored. During the arrest captured on video, Chauvin, who is white, is seen pushing his knee into the neck of Floyd, a 46-year-old black man in handcuffs, for more than 9 minutes on May the 25th, 2020, as he and the 3 other officers arrested Floyd, who was accused of using a fake $20 bill to buy cigarettes at a grocery store. Last month, Chauvin was convicted of Minnesota state murder charges. Our correspondent in Washington, D.C., Maria Bird, joins us now for more on this. Maria, help us understand a bit better this federal grand jury indictment alleging the 4 officers involved in this case violated Floyd's constitutional rights.
Chanel, you're exactly correct. These federal charges, these indictments that are being brought forth are directly correlated to not allowing a Minnesota resident to be free and to be unwillfully deprived of medical assistance. And that is a key concern for the prosecution and a key concern for the U.S. federal judge system. And so this is going to obviously create major challenges as the other officers are being brought up to trial in August. And so this is just furthering, I think, the example of how this George Floyd incident should not be repeated. And this is an incident that not only has now had a verdict of guilty for Derek Chauvin, but it's also a verdict and a sign to policing in America that this is against the Constitution, because no matter who you are, no matter what crime you committed, you have a right to medical assistance if you are in need of that. And furthermore, you also should not be receiving unintentional undue force by a police officer.
So, Maria, what happens next with this? How is this expected to play out, bearing in mind, like you just mentioned, that the 3 other officers, that's of course apart from Chauvin, also face state charges, including aiding and abetting second-degree murder and aiding and abetting second-degree manslaughter?
Well, this now becomes potentially a federal case. We actually saw the first case that was done by the state, but they're now being federal charges because of the constitutional rights issue. So that's going to be the next step. But this will also, I think that many people are concerned that the other officers were not going to receive the same type of verdict as maybe Derek Chauvin did, due to the fact that that was, maybe a one-time event, and that would not lead precedence for the other officers. And so this will continue to support and be used, obviously, by the prosecution in support for their cases.
And speaking of Chauvin, his lawyers are seeking a new trial, saying that there was misconduct and errors of law at the trial last month, and that the verdict was contrary to the law. Considering how huge that verdict was, how likely is this to go ahead?
Many people believe it's very unlikely that this will go ahead. The question is really going to be about that juror, and so the likelihood is that we will not see a retrial for this case. And as you can see now, that these constitutional issues have been brought forth. So that will obviously make it much more difficult for any judge to say that this case should be retried.
All right then, Maria, thanks a lot for bringing us up to speed, and do have a lovely weekend.
Thank you for having me.
In the meantime, in immigration talks with U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris, Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador pitched a tree-planting jobs program in Central America that he said should lead to work visas in the United States. At the start of the call, Harris said the United States and Mexico must fight violence and corruption together, along with the root causes of migration in Central America.
We have put in the work, however, that I believe is required to build a productive partnership and to build on the work we have done in the past. And this partnership, I believe, couldn't be more important today. Our nations face serious challenges, COVID being an obvious one, economic repercussions coming from the COVID pandemic, as well as the surge of migrants arriving at our shared border. Together, we must fight violence. We must fight corruption and impunity. It is in our country's mutual interest to provide immediate relief to the Northern Triangle and to address the root causes of migration. You and I have discussed before an understanding and a belief most people don't want to leave home.
And over in Maldives, doctors say Mohamed Nasheed, the country's former president and current Speaker of Parliament, who was injured in a bomb attack, is in critical condition, undergoing multiple surgeries. The 53-year-old had just left his house in the capital and was about to get into his car late on Thursday when a bomb attached to a motorbike exploded. Residents say the blast was heard across the city. According to police, which called the attack a deliberate act of terror, 3 of Mr. Nasheed's military bodyguards, along with 2 bystanders, also sustained minor injuries. There has been no arrest, but authorities are trying to identify 4 persons of interest who were noticed due to suspicious behavior at the crime scene. No one has claimed responsibility for the attack. And now the regent of South Africa's Zulu nation, Queen Fomb Zulu, has been laid to rest. Her funeral took place at the Royal Palace in Ngoma in the early hours of the morning. A vigil was held overnight. She was buried according to Swati royal culture by a delegation sent by her brother, King Mswati III of Eswatini. The funeral was attended by family members from both monarchies. Now that Queen Fomb has been buried, the focus will be on the squabbles over succession in the Zulu monarch. And finally, speaking of royalty, a tiara passed down through generations of Italy's royal family will be among the highlights at the Sotheby's auction of jewels in Geneva next week. Dating to the second half of the 19th century, the tiara was a wedding gift to Maria Vittoria da Pozzo upon her marriage in 1867 to Amadeo of Savoy, later King of Spain. The tiara features graduated scroll motifs set with diamonds and natural pearls and is on sale with an estimated price of $1 million to $1.5 million. Interesting. And that's the world today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shibowale. Have a lovely weekend.